It began with silence, not the peaceful kind, but the aching sort that wraps around your chest like frost. Elira stood at the river bend, where the world had once felt wide and infinite, and now empty. Her breath came in sharp, trembling wisps, each one vanishing before it could speak of the storm inside her. The snow beneath her boots was untouched, flawless, no trace of him, no footprints, no broken twigs, not even the rustle of a departing shadow. Only the hush of dawn, broken by the soft, eternal sigh of the river flowing below. She should have known something was wrong last night, when the wind grew still and the stars dimmed as if mourning before the loss. But how could she? He had laughed, with her under those stars. Cale, whose voice was wild like the river and soft like fallen petals. They had spoken of spring, of leaving the mountains together. He had brushed a kiss to her temple and whispered, "Tomorrow. Tomorrow." And now the world had shifted, and tomorrow was here without him. The mountains loomed above her, quiet and indifferent, their peaks cloaked in snow like forgotten kings. The river curled below like a sleeping serpent, its surface calm but too knowing. It reflected nothing, no birds, no trees, not even Elira's own face. As if it had swallowed him whole. She called his name once, just once, but even the echo refused to answer. And that, more than anything, broke her. Because in all the moments they'd shared, in every whisper exchanged between heartbeats, she had never imagined he'd leave like this. Without a sound, without a note, without a single footstep in the snow to chase. Her fingers clenched the edge of her shawl as wind curled around her like a ghost. She stood there until her feet grew numb, staring at the path that should have held him, waiting for something, anything, to prove he had been real. But the river just flowed on, as if it had known all along. He was never meant to stay. The wind carried her back to the old orchard, where spring once spilled from the branches in the form of apricot blossoms, soft, blushing things that fluttered like secrets. Elira found herself there again, as if her body remembered what her heart tried to forget. The tree stood in full bloom, unshaken by winter's breath, as if holding the memory for her. And beneath it, she could almost see him. Kyle, leaning lazily against the bark, a mischievous smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth, sunlight tangled in his hair. He had always appeared that way. Not like someone who entered her life, but like someone who had always been there, just waiting for her to notice. The first time she saw him, he was sketching the sky on a napkin in the village inn, murmuring lines of poetry under his breath like prayers. There was something in his eyes, something wild, something that didn't belong to the world of stone walls and quiet routines. He wasn't a man built for staying. She should have known. Now, she stood in his absence, holding the letter he never wrote. A blank page, worn from the way she folded and unfolded it every night. He had promised to write before the snow fell. She had believed him. That was the dangerous thing about Cale. Even his lies tasted like stardust. And now she couldn't tell if he had ever truly been hers, or just a beautiful thought she had once chased in a dream. Around her, the orchard breathed gently, petals drifting to the ground like tiny goodbyes. Her fingers reached out and brushed the trunk of the tree, where once he had carved her name, with his pocket knife, Elira, curved into wood beside a heart left half-finished, like everything he touched. "Were you even real?" she whispered, her voice trembling with more than cold. But the tree said nothing. Only a petal, soft and white, landed in her palm, and then the wind took it too. Grief does not stay still. It moves, it paces, it pulls, and Elira, heart splintered and raw, followed it like a shadow chasing light. She left the orchard the next morning, her shawl soaked in dew and her silence wrapped around her like armor. The villagers watched from behind lace curtains and cracked shutters, whispering as she passed. "She's looking for him," one muttered. "Still?" said another, shaking their head. As if love came with an expiry date. As if truth didn't deserve to be found. She didn't stop for answers. She walked past the farmlands, through the hills that sloped like weary sighs, until the woods turned amber, and the trees leaned in to listen. The leaves had begun to turn, trembling under the cold breath of nearing winter. But she pressed deeper, into places the map did not name, the kind of paths where only lost things went. At a crooked fork between two elder pines, an old man watched her from atop a stone. His beard was silver, his eyes clouded with memory. "Don't go up there," he warned, voice thin as mist. "That mountain doesn't give back what it takes." She asked him if he had seen Kyle, the boy with storm eyes and poet hands. The man only looked away and muttered, "Some say he never had a shadow." Elira walked on. By the third day, her boots had worn thin, and her hands ached from catching branches and brambles. But inside, her fire only grew, fed by the ache, the confusion, the not knowing. Was he lost, taken, or hiding? And if hiding, from what? In the next village, a forgotten cluster of stone huts nestled into the mountain's ribs, she found no kale, but tales. Too many. "He's cursed," said a woman grinding herbs. "He saw something in the stars," whispered a shepherd. "He left because love makes cowards of men," hissed a girl not older than 16. But none of them knew his smile, the way it crinkled only on the left side. None of them had heard him hum tunes without lyrics, or seen the way he stared at the sky as if it owed him answers. None of them had held his heart for even a breath of time. And yet, she could feel it now, like a splinter under skin. Something had been left behind. A thread, a trace, a whisper too quiet for others to hear, and she would follow it, even if it led her off the edge of the world. The river gave her nothing. The villagers gave her stories. But it was the stranger, a man with ink-stained fingers and wind-burnt cheeks, who gave her something she did not expect. Proof. He arrived at dusk, when the clouds hung low and bruised, dragging the last of the sun's gold behind them. He wore a tattered coat and carried a satchel full of sketches. Elira met him at the Crossroads Inn, where the fire was more smoke than heat. He had been traveling the northern cliffs, chasing light and silence, when he saw a man standing by a nameless waterfall, hair tangled, shirt-soaked, eyes distant. He stood still, the artist said, spreading his sketchbook like a priest revealing scripture. Like the water knew him. Elira stared at the page. Her breath hitched. It was Kyle, drawn in charcoal lines, standing at the mouth of a fall she'd never seen. The curve of his shoulders, the tilt of his jaw, unmistakable. A haunting likeness, but not still, not dead, alive, changed. The sketch was dated just 2 days ago. She couldn't breathe. If he had run, why leave pieces behind? Why let himself be seen? Her eyes kept drifting back to the waterfall, not just because of Kale, but because of the way it was drawn. Not as background, but as something alive, writhing, glowing, almost watching him back. "What was the place?" she asked. The painter shrugged. "No name, just noise and mist, north of the Hollow Pass. Hard to find. Most don't come back from there." Elira closed the book gently, hands trembling like the flame beside her. A twist spun inside her ribs, equal parts hope and dread. If he was alive, he wasn't just running. He was calling her. Or warning her. She left that night, wrapped in cold wind and fevered silence, heading toward the place where water whispered and cliffs told secrets. And the sketch burned in her mind. Not just his face, but the eyes. They didn't look lost. They looked like they remembered something she had forgotten. The path toward the waterfall was not on any map, just a rumor that hummed between trees and trembled through the rocks. Elira followed that hum, as if the mountain itself had begun to murmur his name. Days passed like pages torn from a book. Her boots were torn, her skin chafed raw by the cold wind, but something beneath her exhaustion kept her moving, a strange certainty that she was not alone. By the fourth night, she stopped to rest beside a crescent-shaped lake, quiet as glass. The moon spilled herself across its surface like silver paint. And there, in the stillness, Elira heard it. A voice. It wasn't Kale's, not truly. It was softer, layered, within the rustle of pine needles, woven between the cracks of wind. It didn't speak in words, but in longing, in memory, in invitation. She rose slowly, barefoot on the frozen grass, and followed the whisper. The air shifted. The forest thinned, and the land began to change. It was as if the world she knew peeled away, each step pressing her into something older, untouched, sacred. Moss grew thick over stone. Roots twisted like veins. Trees leaned toward her, not in menace, but in sorrow. And above them, clouds dragged low like curtains before a stage. Then, the sound. Water. Not the babble of a stream, but the roar of something, vast, alive, angry. She climbed through the fog, hands grasping slick rock, until she reached the edge. And there it was. The waterfall. Not just tall, impossible. Tumbling from a cleft in the mountain's heart, it poured like liquid light. Not entirely bound by gravity, gleaming like memory, it shimmered with something. Wrong. Or right. She couldn't tell. And standing before it, no, within it, was a figure. For a moment, her heart leapt. Kyle? But no. This figure was cloaked, faceless, watching her with stillness so complete, it shattered the air. She took a step forward, breath caught in her throat. Then the wind screamed. Not a warning, but a warning wrapped in welcome. The cloaked figure turned, slowly, impossibly, and vanished into the fall. And Elira knew. This was not a place men simply wandered into. Kale hadn't run away. He had crossed into something. The mountain did not want her. That much became clear the moment Elira stepped past the veil of mist surrounding the falls. The world behind her faded, the path, the forest, even the sky. What replaced it wasn't darkness, but stillness. A silence so deep it felt like sound had been forgotten. Her breath clouded in the cold, but even that felt muffled, like she had stepped inside a memory. Someone else's. The trees here were taller, older, not just with age, but with awareness. Their bark shimmered faintly, etched with markings that looked like language until you blinked. Moss glowed in shades she didn't know how to name. The air trembled with something unseen, something waiting, and in the distance, laughter. Not cruel, not joyful, just familiar. She turned sharply, heart tightening. Kale? She ran toward the sound, her feet slipping on damp stones, branches slicing her skin. But the laughter vanished as quickly as it had come, swallowed by the hush of the strange place. She stopped in a small clearing, panting, trembling, and, suddenly, cold. There was something lying on the ground. A ribbon, hers, one she had worn the last time they sat beneath the apricot tree. The wind had taken it, and she had let it go. Just a ribbon. Yet here it was, untouched by time, glinting with frost. She picked it up slowly, her fingers shaking, a knot forming in her chest. This place wasn't holding him. It was echoing. Him. Moments, memories, fragments, Pieces of kale scattered like breadcrumbs, but each one twisted, reshaped. He had come here. Yes. But what had it done to him? A rustle. She turned. The cloaked figure again. Farther now, standing beneath an archway of roots, holding something small in its hand. A pendant. His pendant. Then, the whisper again, curling through the trees like smoke. He chose. Her heart cracked. Chose what? The figure didn't answer, just turned, and walked deeper into the woods. This time Elira didn't hesitate. She followed, not because she trusted the path, but because turning back would mean accepting that Cale had left, and she wasn't ready to believe that love could vanish without a reason. The trees opened without warning. One moment Elira was tangled in branches and fog, and the next, a meadow. Moonlight poured over it like spilled milk, softening everything it touched. Flowers bloomed where they shouldn't. White anemones, night phlox, blood-colored lilies bending as if in prayer. The air shimmered faintly, trembling with something unspoken. And in the center of it all, him, Cale. He was sitting by a pool, its surface perfectly still, reflecting a sky that no longer matched the one above. His back was to her, hair longer, clothes strange. But even from behind, even in this unreal stillness, she knew the slope of his shoulders, the quiet way he tilted his head when lost in thought. Her breath caught like thorns in her throat. "Cale," she whispered. He didn't turn, only said, "I didn't think you'd find me." His voice was lower now, worn, as if he had spoken too many truths to things that didn't answer. She took a step closer. "Why didn't you leave anything? Not a letter, not a trace." Still he didn't turn. "Because it wouldn't have reached you. This place forgets time. It forgets everything, even me." She walked to him, knees folding beside his, but she didn't reach out. Not yet. "What is this place?" He stared into the water. "It's called the Vale of Echoes. They say it pulls in souls with unfinished truths. Those who carry questions louder than the world can bear." His voice wavered. "I was looking for peace. I thought I could find it here. I didn't know. Peace meant forgetting who I was. And did you?" Her voice cracked. "Forget me?" Finally he looked at her, and in his eyes, grief. Not absence, not guilt. Just the soft, unbearable ache of someone who had missed her every day. "I remembered you when the river froze," he said, voice breaking. "I remembered your name when the snow fell on the petals. I remembered when the wind called, my name and it sounded wrong without yours beside it." She reached for his hand, warm, real, trembling. "But why stay?" she whispered. "Why not come home?" His eyes dropped. "Because I'm not sure if I ever left." Around them, the flowers began to wilt. The truth wasn't just his, it was hers too. They had both been lost long before he vanished. The ground beneath them trembled, not violently, not loud. Just enough for Elira to feel it in her ribs, like a heartbeat not her own. Around them, the meadow darkened at the edges, as though time itself had begun to curl inward. The pool's surface rippled, no wind touching it. "Cale," she said softly, "tell me the truth." He closed his eyes, and when he opened them, the weight of it all poured out. "I came here to forget," he said, voice a fraying thread. "Not because of you. Never because of you. I loved you too much. That was the problem. You saw the best in me, but He swallowed hard. "I couldn't carry what I had done, what I had become." She didn't move, didn't interrupt, just listened. "There was a fire in the northern mines," he continued, "the one that killed the workers. Everyone thought it was a spark, bad luck. It wasn't. It was me. I made a choice. I shut a gate. I saved 3 men and left 6 behind. His voice cracked. I made the call, and I walked away from the screams. Silence folded over them like ash. I thought I could live with it, he whispered. Thought I could come back to you and bury it somewhere inside. But each night, I'd hear them again. And your face, kind, untouched by ruin, made it worse. Elira's throat burned. So you came here, to vanish? No, he said. I came here to let myself be judged. And the wind rose, not harsh, not violent, but laced with voices. Distant, low, like the sighing of every soul he couldn't save. The meadow pulsed, the flowers bending in patterns that mirrored breath and sorrow. This place, Kyle said, looking at the pendant in his hand. It lets you choose to forget, to stay, or to face what you left behind. And what does that mean? She asked. He looked at her, eyes glassy. It means, if I go with you, I have to live with it all. Forever. Every scream, every shadow, every choice. She reached for him. You don't have to carry it alone, she said, the words trembling but whole. You never did. And then, something changed. The meadow, for the first time, breathed in. The light above them softened. The pool shimmered with something like acceptance. The cloaked figure returned, standing far off, unmoving. Elira understood without needing. To ask, Cale had to choose, not to return to the world, but to live with it. And love, her love, could only walk beside him, not pull him, not fix him, just stay. They stood beneath a sky that no longer mimicked the real world. Violet-hued, rippling like silk, with stars that blinked too slow to be stars. Behind them, the pool had gone still again. Before them, the cloaked figure raised one hand, not in threat, not in blessing, but in offering. 2 paths unraveled from its feet. One was made of stone, cracked, familiar, real. The way home, sharp-edged and unforgiving. It pulsed with every memory Cale had tried to bury, every fire, every face. The other was nothing, just mist. A path that erased itself behind each step. A promise of forgetting, of staying in the veil, untouched by the weight of guilt. Or love. Cale stared at both, jaw tight, eyes locked in battle with himself. Elira didn't speak. She couldn't. This wasn't her choice to make. She only stood beside him, hand still in his, fingers cold but anchored. If he let go, she wouldn't chase. If he stayed, she wouldn't save him. That was the price of love that was real. It could not bind, only beckon. I dreamt, he whispered, that if I stayed here long enough, I'd forget your name. And did you? She asked, barely audible. No. He turned to her. I remembered it every time I looked at the stars. The cloaked figure stepped back, vanishing like breath on glass. Time slowed. Cale reached into his coat and drew out the pendant, the one he wore always. Inside it, a locket of her hair, placed there long ago on a spring morning when the apricot trees bloomed. He held it to his chest. Then, he dropped it. The pendant fell, vanishing into the still pool without a sound. He turned to Elira and nodded. I want to come home, he said, even if it breaks me. Tears streamed down her face. Then we'll break together, she whispered, pulling him into her arms. Behind them, the stone path grew clearer. But the meadow, once serene, began to tremble. The veil was not kind to those who chose to leave. It resisted, like a dream refusing to let go of the sleeper. The sky fractured, the ground pulled away, and suddenly, the choice was not just made. It had to be survived. The world cracked open beneath them, not in fury, not in rage, but in the quiet way the earth sighs before a storm. The ground beneath Kale and Alira trembled, the edges of the meadow peeling back like the final pages of a forgotten story. The dim stars above them, once distant, unreachable, now seemed to bow low, whispering in a language neither of them could understand. And then the veil began to vanish, not with the sudden force of destruction, but with the slow, gentle fading of a dream. The trees dissolved into mist, the flowers bent toward the ground in reverence, and the once still pool began to bubble, rippling with the echoes of a choice made. Kale's hand tightened in Alira's. The stone path behind them crumbled, turning to dust in the night wind, while the mist at their feet rose higher, enveloping them like a cocoon. They weren't alone anymore. In the silence that followed, there was no judgment, no pain, just the sound of breathing, together. "Do you think," Kale began, voice soft, as though testing the air for his own thoughts. "Do you think we can ever go back?" Alira looked up at the sky, her gaze meeting his, and something shifted inside her. Something both painful and freeing. "No," she whispered. "But maybe that's how it's meant to be." The mist thickened, the land shifting beneath them, folding into a place both strange and familiar. It wasn't the veil anymore, and it wasn't the home they had left behind. It was something new, a space where the past was remembered, but not bound. A place where the choices they had made, the ones that had shaped them, would no longer define them. The road forward stretched ahead, unknown, but full of possibility. The flowers, now glowing with soft light, whispered their own soft secrets. Kale kissed her forehead, gently, softly. The weight of years, of separation, of guilt, of love, melting into the soft brush of their skin. "We'll build something new," he said. She nodded, the tears finally flowing freely, but this time not from sorrow. They were tears of release, of knowing that sometimes love didn't mean fixing. It didn't mean returning to what was lost. It meant moving forward, together. As they walked, hand in hand, the last remnants of the veil dissipated behind them, swallowed by the dawn that began to rise, faint at first, but growing. And in the distance, the mountains stood tall, waiting. The river whispered its secrets. The wind hummed a lullaby. Nature, it seemed, had always known the way, and Kale and Alira, bound not by promises of forever but by the truth of now, walked toward it, together.